many entrepreneurs do this. It's kind of like you are the product, and then you got to figure out how to also scale a product. And all during that time, I was also finishing my doctoral work. And so I was writing my dissertation, trying to coach people, trying to do business development and all that. And it was mind-numbing.
Hello and welcome to Business Underdog, the podcast where we bring you inspiring stories for the aspiring entrepreneur. I'm your host, Eric Remer, and I'm thrilled to have you join us on this exciting journey. Welcome to Business Underdog. I'm your host, Eric Remer, and I could not be more excited about our guest today. We not only get a kind of world-class, coach, but also a world-class business owner who has built a really amazing business around coaching, but really started with that kind of mindset of how do I help leaders become better leaders through his coaching practice, and he evolved that into a really successful business. I've personally known our guest for 15 plus years, and he'll check me on the time, but he has impacted my life in ways that I can't say enough on this podcast and many, many other people's lives as well, from his guidance, his coaching, his insight, his experience. And, I'm just super excited to introduce CEO of OwlHub, David Morelli. I've been talking to you about you building your business for the last, 5+ years and all the things you've had to go through, and the big accounts, the lost accounts, and the different pivots you've had to make. And you're going to tie that all into, and our listeners also are going to hear some of the leadership stuff that you've worked on. And so, we'll talk about, understanding your respect coaching style framework. We'll talk a little bit more about that and what that means. And really understanding how your dedication to organizational development really began. So with that, and by the way, I'm going to learn some stuff also, because some of the stuff in OwlHub I'm not even aware of. So I'm super excited about that as well. So I want to kick it off and really talk first about, what brought you into, coaching in terms of what was the impetus, what was the passion, what got you into trying to help leaders become better leaders?
Yeah, thanks. So it was 27 short years ago. And I was in engineering school and playing semi-pro beach volleyball. I left actually the University of Vermont, of all places. Why would anyone go to play beach volleyball in Vermont? But I went
to makes perfect sense, actually.
Yeah, totally, absolutely. I used to scrape the snow off of the volleyball court, the sand volleyball court, and practice 4 hours a day. But I went to California and in San Diego, and I started playing there. And I needed a job, and so I went to this tech company, and I started working there in sales and marketing, like an entry level role. And the CEO said, "Hey, you know how to succeed really well. You're really passionate about helping people grow and develop. Would you run our personal professional development program of our 200-person tech company?"
Wow.
I was like, "Sure." I don't know.
Isn't that how things always work? You just in the
exactly.
right place, right time, and that's great.
Yeah, so I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing, so let me go take coaches training, because I started to hear about this thing called coaching. And back then there were only 2 schools, and I studied with the founders of one of the schools. And from that point on, it's been my sort of passion, life's work, helping leaders grow and develop through either leadership training and or through coaching. And it's been an interesting journey with lots of twists and turns, but that was the early start, was seeing the potential in others and helping them fulfill that potential. That's the thing that drove me then and drives me now.
And what's so interesting about your story, like many of the small business owners that I talked to and that listen to this, they were a plumber or they were a landscaper. You were a coach, and then you went from being a really sought after coach to building a business around it. So talk to me about, how you built OwlHub and, what was the vision behind building that platform?
Yeah, initially it was, how do we empower people at scale with tools that can help them ultimately fulfill their potential, fulfill their dreams and whatnot. And so we we started off, and I was at the University of Denver at the time. I was running the executive education department at the business school, and then doing coaching and leadership development like through that organization, and teaching and an executive MBA program. And then at one point, I was doing my PhD and doctoral work, and I realized actually now I need to go from being inside of an organization and being entrepreneurial there to outside of the organization. And the real vision was, how do we create this at scale? It marked the beginning of one of my most glorious failures.
Well, this is what we're going to get into. That's the juice of it. That's the fun part. So talk to me about some of the early challenges and what were those challenges and what did you do to adapt, to those challenges?
Yeah, early on, I was like, okay, so here's the thing. Leadership development today, companies are the ones who pay for it. But I can see a world in which, because if you get leadership training, you end up getting more and more income, right? Like you get advancement, you get all of that stuff. So if you really want to invest in yourself and earn more money, the best way to do it is to pay for your own leadership development. And so I had this, we called it Leader Week. It was free leadership training for an entire week where people could tune in, and there were various, hour-long segments. So it was like this week-long event, and we had great guests and brought people on who are experts in this field. And then afterwards, I said, oh, what they're going to do is sign up for more leadership training themselves, right? After having gotten the free taste, they're going to go in and do it. So we spent approximately $200,000, which was almost everything that I had, like saved up for this event. We put it into ads and we put it in all this kind of stuff. And 2,000 people showed up, which was sub many degrees, like a zero extra, like fewer than I wanted to. But then even fewer people signed up because of that premise of thinking that everyone would want to sign up for their own leadership development. They were like, could I get my company to pay for this? And I was like, I don't know, I guess. Like, yeah, go for it. But then people were like, no, it was this whole, anyways, long story short, lost a lot of money quickly on a faulty assumption about what people actually wanted. And even though I made a clean pitch in my mind that you're going to earn so much more money if you do this for yourself, it didn't translate to people actually parting with their money. And this, by the way, also was coinciding with COVID. So was it the COVID effect? Was it not the COVID effect? I don't know. I just thought it was going to be amazing, and it didn't come out that way.
So then, like many entrepreneurs and small business owners, you're in your oh shit moment, and you had to pivot from B2C going back to B2B, and trying to sell it into corporations. So how did that transition work?
Yeah, initially it was, that small dose, can I sell little mini programs that are just for your cohort, right, of people inside your company? And then I was also ramping up more of my individual coaching to say, all right, well, to make ends meet. And I think many entrepreneurs do this. It's kind of like you are the product, and then you got to figure out how to also scale a product. And all during that time, I was also finishing my doctoral work. And so I was writing my dissertation, trying to coach people, trying to do business development and all that. And it was mind numbing. Like all of that stuff together was hard.
Oh, David, you bring up a really interesting point. Look, I've worked with you for 15 plus years, and I know how great you are, right? As you're trying to scale I'm fortunate to continue to be able to work with you, but most people are like, well, I want David, I have an amazing landscape architect who does great work, but when he's got 6 projects, he's only doing 1 or 2 of the projects, and he's got to have the rest of his teams managing and actually building out other projects. So just like every other kind of small business, service-based small business that wants to scale, most of the people that are hiring OwlHub or you want you. So how did you scale from being, David Morelli, the amazing leadership coach, to David Morelli, the CEO of OwlHub, that are giving people, a more broad, scalable platform so you can grow your business?
Yeah, it was that realization number one. And then number two, I thought about, well, there are great coaches in the world, or there are people who want to be great coaches in the world. How can I create tools and systems for those people to end up fulfilling their potential and their greatness, right? And so it is true that, there are people who want me, right? And I appreciate that, and that feels great, with the exception of, like you said, that doesn't scale. So it's almost like in the gold rush, the companies that were actually more successful were the ones that were supplying people who were coming to dig. They weren't the people who were actually digging who were
Yeah.
most successful. And so, in my mind, I want to help empower coaches to be better, and also, more than that, leaders to become better at coaching. Because what I kept noticing is people were struggling, the clients that I had, they were struggling with often the communication with their team members, and how do I bring out the best in them, and how do I grow and scale myself and raise my level. And so the research that I did kind of leads into that, is finding out what do the world's best coaches do, and then how can I turn that into a system that can help empower people to become better coaches, either as professional coaches or in the leadership context. Yeah.
Well, that's a perfect transition into understanding kind of the platform and the system you've created. Can you explain your respect coaching, style framework and how it differs from other coaching styles?
Yeah. So RESPECT is an acronym. And the acronym came out of I studied 16 of the world's best coaches. So they were a former coach at Google, and a founder of one of the world's best coaching schools, and best-selling author in coaching. Somebody who was a former command master chief of the Navy SEALs, who ran the Navy SEAL teams on the East Coast and then went into coaching and leadership development. Somebody else who coaches the executive team and board of one of the world's top 3 universities that you'd know the name of if I said it. And so I had conversations with these folks and said, hey, when you're coaching, what do you do? And they said things like, well, I hold people accountable. And I said, okay, and what are you trying to have happen as a result of it? Well, I'm trying to get them to accomplish more. And so there were quotes about what they were actually doing and saying. And I took those and distilled it down. There were 2,235 quotes that I
Wow.
hand coded into various categories about what they were actually talking about, these world's best coaches. And then it all distilled down into 7 distinct ways of going about the coaching interaction. And we can dive into a little bit more if you want, but that was the sort of that framework, these 7. I started sharing that with people, and they were like, wow, like this actually makes sense of this thing that we know, like, kind of not that much about. Like, we all agree about coaching being important, but we don't actually have a system to understand how to do it and how to do it really well. And so that's where this came out of. And so, again, RESPECT is an acronym for these 7 styles that, whether you're leading people or whether you're coaching, are essential for needing to be good in all of them in order to be giving the other person what they need in the conversation.
And what is that acronym for? Could you? I'm sure it's RESPECT, and there's a word for each of those.
Yeah. So the R is the rallier. That's when you're having interactions, being goal oriented, action oriented. So holding people accountable to get them to accomplish more. That's kind of the essence of the rallier. The E, for the first E, is the educator. And that one is where you're helping people grow and develop their skill sets, right? That's part of good, coaching, good leadership, is helping to elicit from them what they already know and then filling in the gaps with them so they're more capable. The S, for the strategist, is all about helping people problem solve and figure out take the complexity and boil it down to a simple solution. The P is provocateur. This one is about that challenging people. Eric, if you don't mind, one of the first days that you and I sat across from each other, and you're like, your job is to coach me. I don't know if you remember this. You're like, your job is to tell me when I'm full of it, because I don't have anybody else who's going to challenge me and push on me. Like, you've got to, like, don't let me believe my own thinking if you feel like my thinking is off. Like, push back on me. That's provocateur.
Gotcha.
E, for the second E, is explorer. So that's about helping people find new innovative thoughts, like, hey, what's really important to you, or what matters. The C, for the confidant, is about helping people feel safe and seen, like they can open up and just vent or share the emotions that are going on. And then T, for transformer, is about helping them find and fulfill their potential. And sometimes when we go to reach or try and, whether it's about entrepreneurship or something else, when we try and reach for our potential, sometimes we run into fear of failure, imposter syndrome, self-doubt, all of that stuff. And so part of Transformer is moving through those difficult moments, if you will, to, in a way, fulfill what's possible for you. And so respect, ideally, you're moving in and out of all.
So these skills are, not just for training coaches, but for just leaders to better coach their teams across organizations. So it actually scales not just from coach to leader, but really leader to the rest of the organization and sub leaders to, to their teams as well. So as you've kind of rolled this out across, I know you've worked with many large organizations. What impact have you observed? What have you seen kind of evolve from implementing these coaching styles throughout organizations?
Yeah. One of the great organizations that I often point to for this work is there were two people who went through our Train the Trainer program, which is essentially, hey, get trained in the skills and the tools. There's assessments that go along with that to help leaders actually know what styles they're strong in, what styles they aren't strong in, as well as for direct reports to say, hey, here's the styles that I want from you. So one organization called Job Nimbus, they're a 200-person tech company that's sort of in the contractor, software kind of space. They decided to roll it out to everybody. They said, we want to see if we can increase our job satisfaction here. And previously, places that have a high coaching culture versus a low coaching culture, they had 24% increase in job satisfaction. They had 24% increase in job productivity, a whole bunch of other financial metrics that like 94% increase in return on equity and all kinds of stuff. So they were like, hey, we think we're going to be able to increase our engagement. And instead of just saying it's this for leaders, they decided to roll it out to every single employee. So every employee got the Respect Coaching Styles assessment that tells them how they coach. They got a 1-hour workshop that went along with it to help them understand how to do it. They had these little cards that they printed out for people to put on their computers so that they could remember how to do it and how to use it. And there were various practice sessions and things like that. Well, they went all the way to the board saying, this is the most important thing we're going to roll out this entire quarter and as a people function. And so they didn't get 24% increase in job satisfaction. Instead, they got 180%
Wow.
increase
That's
in
amazing.
employee satisfaction. And that was in 3 months.
Wow.
And it's now 2 years later, and it's been a permanent change. Right? The job satisfaction is the same across the board. So when you teach people how to do this stuff, whether you're a leader or even just, these different dynamics, they play out in our regular everyday conversation, how we're interacting with people. When you learn how to do this stuff and do it well, it has a big impact for both people.
And so, by the way, I know that business and they're doing extremely well in the market. So in addition to their employee satisfaction, I think they're crushing it in the marketplace, which is awesome. So for the listeners, what practical steps, can leaders take to foster this, culture within their teams? What can they do practically, starting today to start making that a better, not just a better culture, but a better platform for people to kind of learn and grow as you always talk about, people and professionals.
Yeah. Whenever I'm working with people in the beginning, we have various programs that kind of take people through the various building blocks. One of the first building blocks that I work with people on is asking good questions. Oftentimes, we're really skilled at making statements, and particularly leaders who either have been in the field for a while or whatnot, they lean on two styles in particular. They lean on educator, which is, let me tell you all the stuff that I know because I'm a subject matter expert about this thing. And they lean on strategist. Let me tell you how to fix the problem, right? And so a lot of their conversations, they fall into what I call the expert trap. They're like, I'm the expert. I'm going to dump the information on you, and you're supposed to take notes and go do it. But invariably what happens is because people weren't a part of the solution and they weren't engaged in the thinking, whatever it is that they go do, they probably remembered half of it or less. They go to implement it. It doesn't work. They show back up at your office and they're like, hey, it didn't work. And you're like, well, clearly you're incompetent. It might be what you're thinking, right? You're like, but you don't realize actually it's you didn't bring them into the conversation, have them thinking about it, have them part of thinking about the solution. So they didn't know how to make some of those minor choices to say, oh, how do I adapt to when I start implementing this? How do I make this successful? Instead, they're just like, I'm trying the thing that you said. Oh, look, it didn't work. Right. And so it's a wrong setup from the start. But if you bring people into the dynamic where you're engaging them through conversation and often through these open-ended questions, you can get them to participate more, which will get them to own it more. And I don't know a single business owner who doesn't want more ownership throughout their organization.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because we all, as a leader, I know that, of course you want ownership and accountability, but you often doubt people can do that, and you're not giving them the right tools to actually take that ownership. And when they take that ownership, I mean, every leader is, when people around them take more ownership, it's like a sigh of relief, because they become almost owners in the business, and owners of what their specific, whatever their specific roles are. They own it, they crush it. And honestly, that's one less thing that you have to worry about, because trust that they can do that. I'm going a little bit back to something you talked about. A lot of small business owners, a lot of service-based business, and I'll just use a plumber, for example. Someone could be a great plumber, right? And now they created a plumbing company. They have 3, 4, 5, 10 trucks out there. The concern with every business owner is, I know I'm really good at what I do, and I'm also really good at my service. I'm great with customers, but I can't duplicate myself. And so I have to trust, Jimmy and Johnny and Jenny, that they're going to do a really good job out in the field. And I know that a lot of things you've done with OwlHub is create systems to kind of ensure that, whether they get David Morelli creating the rollout or somebody else in your organization, that people are getting the similar experience. So I think it's so helpful for business owners to understand the systems and the thought process behind scaling yourself, so the end customer can get the same value from the people that work for you or you directly. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I work with a lot of either CEOs or business owners or whatnot. And what I found is the thing that they don't do well is reflect on what they themselves do well, and actually like think through how to codify that. And sometimes it takes a sounding board, whether it's a coach or somebody else to kind of interact with, that allows them to take their thoughts and dump them and create like, here are the ways that I'm thinking about, right? And in a way, that's going back to styles, that's the educator style, is, creating it could be a system or it could be a thought process about how you go about things. And then engaging people in trying to run that system themselves. I created this 4 different step delegation program, essentially, where, you start off and you have to give them the map, where like, hey, here's how I go about what I do, or here's how I think about what I think about. And then here, you go try. And what usually happens is they call that delegation, and then they're like, cool, you go do it. No. And then it comes back and it's like, it fails, right? But we fail to actually ask questions about like, okay, so when you're trying it, like, where do you find, if it's the plumber business that you mentioned, right? Like, where are the wrenches? I'm just sort of being facetious in some ways.
You're clearly not a plumber, right, Dave?
Yeah, right, exactly. Like, how would you go about this? Let's say they send them out to declog a drain or something like that. Okay, so and when did you bring in the snake, or when did you, like, what was your process there? And so you actually go about the tactics of it. That's the second step, is the tactics. And in some ways, either shadowing them or whatnot, but having them drive. I don't know if you've ever been to like a Mac store or whatnot, but whenever they're helping you browse the products and get set up, I don't know if you noticed, they don't actually touch the computer for you. They have you do it so that you learn almost like in pattern in your own brain. So oftentimes when people go to pass something off, they tell them about it and then they send them off, rather than sitting there with them and helping them through the tactics. That's the second step. Then the third step which is often missed, is the philosophy. And so helping them understand why they're doing what they're doing, right? So if you're declogging a drain in a certain order, or what, a prioritization of how you're checking things through, and why do we start with, putting your hand into the garbage disposal? Like, why is that the step that goes first? Oh, well, because, and so they're kind of like thinking through the philosophy behind
Yeah.
it. And why is it that we want to make sure that we give them the contract up front, or right,
Yep.
whatever it is? And so it's like the why behind the thing. And then they have, building blocks. They have your system. They've done the steps. And then they know the why behind it, so that when it doesn't follow that pattern, they actually have I'll call it the thinking to make on the fly calls, so that then finally on step 4, they're ready to have it delegated to them and fully own it, because they understand the whole process all the way through.
Yep.
If you don't do that, you set people up for failure, and that affects not only them, for them saying like, dang it, like I suck at this. Well, I shouldn't try new things. But it also ends up back on your plate as the leader, and you lose trust in them, where it's actually, being a little provocateur, it was actually your fault to begin with, right? Because you didn't set them up through this process. Now, fair enough, you didn't necessarily know about these 4 steps. But now that you do, right, walking them through this process allows them to actually own it.
Yeah. That makes so much sense. And I could see in my own mind while you're talking some of the things that I forget to do along the way, because you just assume everyone either knows what you know. So you give them the kind of, guidance, go do this. And you forget that you've had 30 plus years of experience doing that. And you've made the mistakes along the way, and you've tripped over the nail on the floor, or whatever those things are going to be. And by giving them the whys, it's almost like you talked about the apple. It's programming their minds to think of, it's not just the hows, which could be forgotten, but when you understand the why, it becomes a much deeper understanding. So switching a little bit to technology, and on every conversation that I literally have, I swear 80% of the conversations I have internally right now are about AI, and how AI is changing truly every aspect of our business. I think about EverCommerce. 12 months from now, our business will look completely different than it looks today. I wish we could stop the world and make it look like that today, but we can't. And there's work to be done to get there. But a lot of great work is being done every day to get there. So how do you see technology and AI changing the leadership, business, the leadership world from your perspective?
Yeah, there's a couple different things that I see on the horizon, and things that we're also internally doing. Where I see things going is AI is an enabler. And most people are like, AI is a computer thinking for us. Well, actually, AI, if you look at it, it's drawing from decades of human created content, in most cases, like a large language model, from all of that and various decisions that we've made. And it starts to, run math on numbers that we give it. So there's a lot of human behind AI that actually goes and has gone into the thing. So a lot of people fear like the big scary machine. And I understand that. And also know that most stuff that it's pulling from came from humans originally anyways. So in some cases, AI is like a big synthesizer of information that came from human, right?
Yeah.
So it does a lot of the synthesis for you. That said, when we look at AI in the coaching conversation and for leadership, some of the questions are like, well, so how do I ask a better question? Or how do I ask a question in this particular case that's going to elicit a better interaction from them? And so what we did was we created an AI tool that has the styles behind them. And you can actually type into a little chat box like, hey, here's the situation that's going on. And it'll generate coaching questions for you.
Interesting.
In order to help you in the various styles to see different ways you could approach it. So our approach is, how do we empower humans with technology to be better in their interactions as human beings? Because I think there are certain things that AI does and does well today. And then there are certain things on the horizon that I still think that there's a human role in. But eventually, AI is going to be managing a lot of the tasks that people have, right? It's almost going to be a task manager. AI is partially a decision maker for many people. They're turning to it for that. It's an advanced synthesizer, almost like a consultant. Like,
Yeah,
hey, I have this issue. What do you think I should do about this?
totally.
Ultimately, hopefully, we're still making our own decision. Um, but when it comes to leading people, I believe, and I teach a class around the rise of the coaching leader. Whereas I think we will always need to coach and develop those around us, but we need to sort of lean on some technology to help us ask better questions, help us have better interactions so that the best parts of being a human being come out and
It's
don't get lost.
I'm thinking about I think the CEO of Amazon just came out. I've heard this in many different ways, and he said, AI is not going to take your job. The person who knows how to use AI is going to take your job.
Yeah.
So what's really, I think a lot of organizations are pushing to understand how you can utilize that tool to become better at what you do. And those who understand and integrate that into their daily workflows are just going to have such an advantage in, the next generation of, whatever they're going to be doing. So it's really along the line, similar as we talked about. And have you seen in the businesses that you work with, are there steps that, kind of non-tech forward companies like the service-based business that, I talk to every day, that they should start taking to, be ready for this next advancement?
I think starting off in the repetitive task category is really good. Like start where your pain points are. Right? It could be in marketing your business and saying, well, I know I should put out posts out there. I should put in content or whatever. And that's an area where people are leveraging AI fairly well. And it's getting a lot better. The large language models could be ChatGPT or something else, where you say, hey, here's some of the unique thoughts that I have about this or how I go about solving the problem. Write a blog around this that I can then post to others, and here's the audience that I'm trying to attract, right? And so giving it that task gets it 90% or more of the way there, where you can then modify it and give it your own voice or tweaks, but you don't have to do draft number one. I think around the businesses, that's a really easy place to start. It could also be as you're looking at financials, and there's different ways you can protect your data. So you're not just putting it out in the world raw. You can, sign up for an account that has, guardrails, if you will, of where the data stays. You can say, hey, here are my financials. What are some patterns in these financials that would help me make better decisions, or where,
That's amazing. Yeah.
and so it's like the thoughts you have, but you don't know how to answer could be one place to look, or the time you wish you could spend, but can't, right? Think about like, how could I ping this and see what comes back? In a
That's
way,
really
it's a
great.
little bit like a thought partner again, or a consultant. And so those are places to start that I found being pretty easy.
Those are really great thoughts, and I think very practical. And we could all do them literally today by opening up ChatGPT and asking a question. So that's really helpful. So thinking more about you and OwlHub and your future, can you tell me a little about the Coaching Leadership Foundation course and the Train the Trainer programs that you have out there?
Yeah. So one of the big things that we found is that there are two cases around organizations: people who want to bring the respect coaching styles into their organization to say, hey, we want to teach other people how to be better coaches and to use this system. And by the way, this system, we've been out for 2.5 years. It's gotten recognized by Allstate. It's their official internal coaching model of Allstate.
Wow.
It's being adopted by one of the top 3 of the Fortune 500 list. They're bringing it into their leadership development programs to teach their leaders how to coach. Capital One is now sending their leaders to the Train the Trainer program, as well as a number of other big name organizations that I've signed NDAs that I can't say. But in 2.5 years, right, those organizations have said like, hey, we caught the vision of what you're doing, and this makes sense of coaching in ways that we just haven't been able to thus far. And We've even gotten awards by the International Coaching Federation, the largest coaching body on the planet, most innovative award and the most valuable to the coaching profession award. So it's catching, and it's catching quickly. So people are
Yeah.
like, hey, we could develop our leaders with this. And it's a system and tool set that makes sense to everybody. I haven't run into a leader who's not like, oh yeah, I see the styles that I'm high in, and oh, those styles that I'm low in, those make sense. And so then they're in this place of, well, how can I improve? And that's really what we want, is for people to be able to have internal sources of that knowledge. So systems can be self-perpetuating, like Job Nimbus, right? Where they did it themselves. I didn't actually go in and do it, right? It was their internal folks. So that's one, is bringing it as a system. But there's another use case where it's just, hey, I want to get better as a leader myself and find out, how do I be a good coach? And today, most coaches training is based on the model of a professional coach, right? Like when I got trained. So it's almost as if you have your own business and your shingle says coach. But a lot of leaders, they're like, well, how do I learn those skills? And there's a lot of premises about that professional coaching industry that don't actually translate to when you're the boss, when you can hire or fire somebody, when you can assign them work, because that stuff doesn't really port over. So how do you be a leader and coach people to be at their best? And we sort of strip down both management coaching, like the leadership side of it, as well as the coaching side of, to say, if we fuse these together in a way that doesn't have them feel like they're two different things, what are the principles with which you need to coach others? And so I did more research around that and created a system so that people could actually know, here are the exact things you need to do to coach as a leader. And so one is about the styles, and then the other is about a system where, as an individual leader, you can become better at that. And it's like a 20-hour training that people can attend.
And if people are interested, they can go to OwlHub.com and
Yeah.
it's all on there.
Yeah.
That's great. And by the way, David, it's been amazing. You said, last 2.5, 3 years, I saw, 4 or 5 years when you had to hit that pivot and then go the other direction. And to watch the success you've had building your business is awesome to see. And it's, I know personally the value that, you bring to the table, and seeing you doing this in a larger scale, on a larger platform, is really awesome. So what is your vision? What is your vision for OwlHub and for, leadership coaching in general? I'd love to hear kind of where you want to take this.
Yeah. I dream of a world where people have the tools and access to understanding, how do I have the conversations that I need to have in a way that feels really good to me and brings out the best in others. And for respect to be the most widely understood and adopted. Like when you think coaching, you think respect. Just like when you think maybe strategy, you think like a SWOT analysis. Like it's almost like the first move is, okay, let's go think about doing that. So when you think about coaching or developing people, that it's ubiquitous, that people are like, oh, and understand the styles and how to use them. That's the dream, is that it empowers people to have the best conversations possible, and that it's not just for leaders and for coaches. We've had a lot of people say, this helps me with my marriage, and it helps me with my kids, and it helps me with being a community member. Like I'm a much better person all around, because I know how to, like what style to use or what to say in certain moments to really communicate what I need to communicate and have them engage in ways that are really meaningful.
You and I have always talked about that. I mean, I say this every day, but there's only one you, and whether you're in the office or you're at home, the growth you're gaining from either, and you spend more time in the office than you do at home. So utilizing that platform as a personal platform for your own growth is going to bleed into other aspects of your life as a father, a friend, a partner, or whatever that would be. And it's the more tools you have to grow personally and professionally, it's going to just make you a better, human being in general. So I'm excited for you to grow your OwlHub platform, because I know more people will. The world will be a better place as people understand what goes behind the thoughtfulness for your own personal growth. And as you grow personally, you're able to kind of share that with other people. And so I think that's really amazing. So I always love to end. You've been a successful, really renowned coach for many, many years. You now are a successful business leader and CEO, helping Fortune 100 companies around the world. What advice would you give to that aspiring entrepreneur that has a skill? They are, they're good at what they do, but they haven't taken that leap yet to, put their own shingle out there and do their own thing. What advice would you have for that person? And, would you give them the push to do it, or, be more careful in this environment? Like, what do you feel about that?
Yeah, I feel like one of the big things that I find in successful people is they find what they're passionate about, like that really matters to them, and they find a unique way to do it that is what people resonate with. It's like, yeah, that's the way that it should be, right? That's the way that people should feel in interacting with whatever profession or whatnot. Like to be willing to do things that people aren't willing to do. In my industry, not a lot of people are willing to do a PhD and go through the brain damage to find something new and to risk it not working, right? But that risk paid off. The risk with like the other thing that I mentioned is biggest mistake that didn't, right? But like to realize that there's as much pleasure as there is pain in the entrepreneurial journey. It's hard. And at the same time, it's incredibly rewarding if you love what you're doing. So hopefully there's some part of you that connects to something deeper about the journey that has it not just be about the money, because if it's just about the money, when you're in perilous situations, you will go, I'm out. I'm going to go find a job because this hurts and this sucks. And so it's that willingness to stick through pain and to do it for something that you're passionate about, and perhaps a purpose or a vision behind it really, really helps.
That's great advice. Coming from both the teacher and the student, the professor that tells you how the world can work, but never goes out in the world. You were that professor telling other business leaders how to run their business, and then you went out in the world and did it yourself. And I think that combination of experience and talent is profound, and your words and your thoughts and your insights are incredibly valuable. So, David, every time we speak, I'm better for it. I learn, I grow, and I can't thank you enough for sharing your wisdom with myself and all our listeners today.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. And Eric, I feel like just not only do I love what you're doing here on this podcast, but I really appreciate what you're doing in the world, taking a stand for helping people be their best. And thanks so much for having me on.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks, David. Thank you for joining me on this episode. I'd like to invite you to subscribe to Business Underdog on your favorite podcast platform. By subscribing, you'll never miss an episode and you'll be the first to hear these incredible stories. Please be sure to follow us on social and visit our website at businessunderdog.com for episode updates, resources, and more. And thank you for listening today. Until next time, stay inspired, keep pushing forward, and embrace your inner underdog.